Hello, my name is Ilona, and in this series in Shadowwork, I want to talk about free will. Someone asked me about free will. Does it really exist? Because if time doesn't exist and our future lifetimes and our past lifetimes and now everything is now, then we probably already know what we're going to do. And of course, you have people that believe that everything is already set in stone. There's nothing we can do about it. We cannot influence anything. So there are a lot of people with this spiritual mindset. Well, it doesn't really matter what we do because it's already set in stone. So they have a very fatalistic point of view in a way, like everything is predestined. So I want to talk about that. I believe that we do have free will. And to explain this a little bit, I just want to talk about the creation of this universe. I'm reading Wes Penre right now, Wes Penre Papers. Very interesting, it's Wespenre. I can truly recommend it if you want to read more. There is ton of material, so I'm kind of just reading a little bit and then I'm kind of leaving it. I'm just feeling through it, thinking about it, and then I get back to it because it's so much. Anyway, he talks about he really got together a lot of material from a lot of people and really kind of shows his point of view as well. But he talks about what other people think, a bit like what my video is in a way about. I of course show other different points of view as well, but I talk about my point of view. And this resonated with me that this experiment was created by first source, he calls it, like God. That's the real God, God that created everything. He calls the first source. There is some confusion about if it's a him or a her, but I believe that he mentions that most alien races see the God as female. I don't think ultimately that's right. And then, of course, what happened on our Earth, it was changed to male, and it had to do with flipping everything and inverting everything. It's a possibility. But we have first source, we have God. And God started creating the founders. And the founders ought to be underneath God, but in, how do you say this, together with God, they created life and life forms. And then the creator gods underneath the founders take over and start working with that as well. So you have all these, how do you say this? There's this hierarchy of working with DNA, working with life forms, seeding life forms, and ultimately this entire multiverse is about free will, if I'm not mistaken. This experiment is free will, which means anything can go, anything is possible. And to be very honest, to me that sometimes is very hard to believe, especially when I hear the horrible things that are happening with children and just the horrible things around the world. It's like, really, was this necessary that it got that bad? But unfortunately it did, because apparently, and I thought that was very interesting, that Wes Penre actually mentions that we started with service to self and service to others. But the service to self at the beginning of the experiment was meant that you can focus completely on yourself as long as it doesn't hurt other people. So you can do your own thing, be yourself, and by being yourself and service to self, you actually let other people service themselves as well. So you're teaching them in a way as well to service themselves. But it wasn't, how do you say this, hurting other people or using other people for yourself. That was not part first of when it started. So things changed. And I do truly believe that the experiment got completely out of hand. It is part of the experiment. It is, of course, in a way created, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. But the experiment was completely open. It had to be unpredictable. Anything goes, anything was possible. So also the changing of that part of service to self was, of course, possible. That's with free will. People can decide. Everyone has, how do you say this, has their own prerogative to choose things. So that's most likely what happened with why things got out of hand. And I truly believe that's why we have now spiritual forces helping us, because it's of course affecting everything around the universe, the other universe, the multi-universe. It's really affecting everything now, because the service to self wasn't meant to be hurting other people, to completely, but it is part of what happened. So maybe a bit difficult to explain. So it was ultimately part of the experiment, but I don't think anyone that first started, especially not First Source, that started God, that started this experiment, thought that it was going to get that bad. So it's complicated. So it is part of the spiritual plan. So I know a lot of people saying, well, the dark energies are there to help us grow. You can see it like that, but I believe, I'm not so sure if this was really part of the growth to begin with, but it happened, unfortunately. That's what a lot of people, you maybe even see that in your own life, that you made decisions that you knew didn't feel good, but you were doing them anyway, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, you're like, I should have never done that. This is a disaster. And I think that's exactly what happened in experiment, except that the people that are serving service to self completely lost connection with God, with Source. So they really don't look at their own actions and think that that's horrific. In their minds, this is what they should be doing. They need the energy because they completely disconnected themselves. And they need other people for their energy. So I think there is free will. And it got pretty much out of hand here. But we have free will. And I view this as... when I look at free will, that what we choose and decide now has an effect in our future lifetimes, but also our past lifetime, because everything is happening now. That's why it's so important that we start taking, taking back our strength, start choosing what do we want, start using our own free will. We have that right, and it's really what we need to do, because then we change everything in all times, in all areas in time. Very important. So free will to me is something that we need to create. We need to start using. And unfortunately, a lot has been taken away. We've been tampered with, and we are now in the time that things are changing. How do you say this? We are starting to use our junk DNA. I do believe that it's being reactivated in this moment about waking up, because we are at the moment that we can start using that again. I do believe the Whiteheads, a lot of spiritual forces are working along to help us in this evolution. I don't think it was meant to get this bad, but it was part of the experiment. So you can't say the dark energies were necessary to wake us up. Although if I look inside myself, I'm like, I'm not so sure if this was really necessary, but it happened. And that's with a lot of things, that some things get completely out of control, and that is being unpredictable. That is this experiment ultimately on such a humongous level. This experiment of anything can happen, anything goes. And then it's up to us what we want to do with this. I also want to mention about reincarnation. I do believe that is part of our journey to reincarnate, and then we can leave our bodies and go to another dimension, to go to other. Ultimately, that was what's supposed to have happened. We are multi-dimensional. But what I believe has happened, and I'm reading about this in the West Penver papers as well, and other material, that there is or has been a reincarnation trap, which means before we could leave and go to another dimension, another universe, but the dark energies have locked us off, so to keep our souls inside or around Earth. And I believe, I think they had this trap near Saturn for a long time, and then near the moon, if I'm not mistaken. And they would take in all these souls. So if we would leave our bodies, they would take our souls, they would bring us in a certain area where it would seem that we are surrounded by our loved ones. So this of course, see if it resonates with you, but I've read a lot about this, so it doesn't mean that it's true or not. Like I said, see if it resonates. And that we were sent back and our memories was wiped again. And of course we would meet people and, how to say this, sometimes make agreements that we would meet certain souls or that we would start certain things. But of course, when we came back, our memories were completely wiped and we still had to make decision. So it's even a possibility that someday you should have met someone, but because you made another decision, you did not meet that person. Usually when you grow later on and are more open to other possibilities again, it's a possibility that you will meet that person then. But it's how do you say that? It's not set in stone what you agreed to before you got in here, but it's also a very possibility that you were pretty much just used in this reincarnation trap. So it seemed like you were talking about your lives, but really they were just kind of putting you wherever they wanted you because they wanted your energy. But that has stopped, if I'm not mistaken. I've read about this or saw a video that the reincarnation trap has been taken over by the white hats. It's not there anymore, which means that if we now leave this earth, we can go where we want to go. So it's very possible that a lot of people that will be leaving earth also do that because they sense they are now free to go. So you have to understand that people that are leaving may not just leave because they are not awake or they don't want to know things or they just follow the guidelines, and that's part of their karma, or because they didn't make a choice. The choice was made for them. It's also possible that unconsciously they feel that they now can go and be free and join other universes and multiverses. So that's a possibility as well. I thought that was very interesting. And I do believe that especially, it's very similar, of course, to stories when people die. They get drawn into this light, they meet a loved one or a spirit guide. Doesn't mean that the spirit world isn't there. But it's possible that the dark energies have hijacked that spiritual world. It certainly is there. We certainly have connections with higher energies, but it's very important to understand that for a long time we were completely kept in the dark. And reincarnation wasn't about losing your memories. It was actually about, of course, experiencing that. And if you continue in another life, you would have that experience as well, because there are a lot of the dark energies who've kept their memories. Doesn't mean that they're spiritually evolved, but they found a technique that keeps their memories. So if they do reincarnate, they know exactly what happened before that, so they can build up on that. And we don't have that. They purposely done that, because ultimately, if you don't know what you've done before, you can keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. There is no growth in that. So I thought that was very interesting. So free will is, to me, that we have the free will to choose. We have the right to choose. It's also up to us that we start using our free will. We are so powerful. We can manifest so many things. We start working with our energies. We can really manifest what we truly want. It's very important that we now start manifesting, start focusing on what we want. What do we want to create? I'd like to leave it at this, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.